Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Man Talk podcast. This is podcast number 45, and I'm here with my friend Isaac. Isaac, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jacob. It's an honor.
Yeah, and now we get to get your introduction going, and so that way the audience knows how we got to be friends so long ago. How did this all start, anyway?
That's a good question. It turns out I'm fairly younger than you are, but we have a mutual friend, and that would be my brother,
Yeah.
Jacob. And yeah, Jacob and my brother went to high school together, and Jacob would come over to my family's house, and I would see him occasionally, and yeah, great had a great time. But circumstances, life happens. We part ways. I went to college. Jacob does his thing, college, career. But it turns out our mutual friend got married, and me and Jacob got reacquainted at the wedding. And he told me about this podcast, and I was like, I'd be happy to join. We're both, if you don't know our backgrounds, me and Jacob are both believers in Christ. Um, and common things that believers do is go to church, and that Christians do, because it's a time where you can fellowship and encourage one another, and learn about God and grow in your relationship with God. But what we're going to talk about is more specific, correct? We're talking about church burnout.
Church burnout, such a big
Yeah,
topic.
it is a big topic. So, Jacob, tell me about church burnout.
Okay, just to define what we're getting at here is
Sure. Yeah.
this is somebody who has been in the church for a while or maybe even for a short period of time, and the culture pretty much either pushes them out, they feel like they have to push themselves out, they are too burnout from doing all the activities, which, believe me, I was like, I know what that looks like. That runs in my family. That's a good umbrella term for church burnout. So they just, all right, God's good, but I need to get out of here. Or some people would say God isn't good. I can't stand these
Hmm.
people, and I'm out. Which that's the more dangerous one, which is why we should talk about it, because the
Yeah.
people that are they're getting a false sense of who God is, as opposed to just, hey, you got too involved in the activities, man. Just back it off. Go more 12th century. Just go to church, see your fellowship, put it to bed. You don't have to be the hero of the church. If it needs to be a smaller building because it can't pay its expenses, so be it.
Hmm. Do you think that's a lot of factors involving the individual? Do you think the church has a role to play in this
I would say, yeah.
in the burnout?
I would say,
In
yeah.
what
I
ways?
think people are trying to get the churches too big sometimes. There's a growth policy. We need to get more people in. We got to get more people involved. We got to do more activities. From an introvert's perspective, this is the death of me, because I need I, I can't I can't keep up with all the stinking activity. Give me a lane and I'll go. Some people are wired to do multiple lanes. That is not everybody, and I don't think we should try and put them into that box, because what you're going to do
Yeah.
is you're making them do what's just so outside of their personality, even if they get conditioned to do some of it. Don't you dare think that they were designed for it, because some people just aren't wired to be doing 20 hours a week of church activity. What they should be
Well,
getting, though, as Christians, here's a no less than criteria. You go to a service, you praise God, you listen to the pastor, you mull on it, you pray, and you take care of the believers that are within your reign and your sphere of influence. That's the no
right.
less than criteria.
Yes. And I think that's essential. If you anything in I think if you decrease any of that, you may suffer from just the experience of just lack of experience. Church is about the community. It's not about the individual. Um, you
You put a lot of that
you need to be a
aside.
part. Yeah, you need to be a part of. of the community, and in certain ways they have like things like what's called life groups, which is basically um, groups of people organized by the church that meet together outside of the church, and usually it can be outside of the church time, not doesn't have to be on Sunday, um, but a smaller group that they can meet um, and fellowship. That's another way of basically saying they can talk with each other, socialize, but with the intent of socializing about God and growing in their faith.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, it's talking about life and because Christianity is a religion, it's also a relationship with Jesus Christ, but it involves one another and um, and how we live our lives. It's all encompassing. So th those are important. But what you're saying is, in addition to those groups, or in addition to those different things, going to church, worshiping, things like that, you can get burnt out by basically being the yes man or yes woman, saying, uh, "Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do this," and being involved with too many things. Um, yeah, that's interesting. It's now we talked about this before. You may have a personal experience, or at least you know of some people that had a personal experience. Can you tell me about that that circumstance?
Yeah, sure. This happened to my own family, man. This is why I was skeptical with church growing up, and it's why I still have some level of, hey, I'm going to take care of who's in my sphere of influence, but don't you dare try and throw the entire church body's problems at one person. Not smart.
Hmm.
Don't do it to me. I already saw what happened to my own family. It's not cool, and I don't think my own family will. I've got so my mom and dad, like, they both burned out of church in 1999. They were going to a place called EV Free in the 90s when they had me. So 7 years, go there for 7 years. They slowly tack on more and more stuff for them to do. They're looking at each other like, this is a full time job. We already have a full time job. We have a son. That's not okay. We're going to do something about it. And there's this golden opportunity that happens. Pastor leaves. Well, here's the problem with a lot of modern churches is when a pastor leaves, there's this power vacuum. A lot of people don't like the newer leadership. Half the congregation might quit, go somewhere else. Hey, I heard of so
Hmm.
and so's preaching over there. I've got friends over there already. I don't need to put up with this. And then they leave. Well, my folks were the same thing, but instead of going to another church, they just said, forget it. We're out. So from 1999 to 2021 and counting, they still have yet to return to any level of returning to church on a regular basis. You gotta understand how
Right.
serious that is. Like, that's really serious. They have been damaged in a way, and I would say offset in a way as introverts, because they are introverts like me. They have been pushed to the point where they are going to be more careful about who they're going to let in and who they're going to say yes to. And they still have an agreeable personality type. This is for all those who are agreeable, anyone who's got an agreeable personality type. This is
Yes.
message is for you, because no one else is going to stand up for you. And
Hmm.
you're going to have a lot of these wide-eyed extroverts in a church that are going to try and get bodies everywhere because they
Hmm.
have this impending responsibility that they feel. And then some of them feel like, oh, that'd be good for them. We're going to get some sanctification going on in their life. I order you to do blank, or I'm requesting you to lead this ministry or fill
And
in
then
for
I
this
think it's
Bible study.
well intended in their eyes, but they may not account for the different types of people that are in the church or their background. They may even completely overlook. That's why I think it's important before you ask someone to volunteer their time to get an idea of who they are as a person.
Where are
You
they going to
know?
fit in? Yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes churches often churches are very needy for help because nonprofit situation. Um, and they ask for, volunteers to give up their time, and sometimes people meaning in leadership don't set a limit, or at least don't respect others' time as much. They think, oh, it's for it's for God, you know, then it doesn't matter what I'm asking you to do. And that's dangerous. Um,
Dirty little secret, and it's really important. This is actually talked about in an open space because we can back ourselves off from the cliff on this one. Maybe churches don't need that many activities. Maybe we can back off on that. Maybe we can do activities that don't involve the church's money. Maybe that's something that should be discussed too.
oh boy.
Because then you back away from that, you might realize how much money you don't need to be putting into the church for all this stuff. Now, I don't mind
Right,
giving money to church. That's
right.
Matthew 6,
It's
man. He said it best.
exactly.
He said it best. Give in secret. Let the Lord reward you. You should
Yes.
give. That's fine. What I don't like is when it has to be done involuntarily in the open and people see what you put in. So to me that's like going against everything Jesus said.
Mm,
I agree with the same thing when people say, "Oh, well we need them for this project. We need it for this project." Maybe it's because someone really wants those projects and they don't actually, I mean, maybe they care about people, but I think maybe they care more about their contribution. So we're going to make sure that works. We're going to make sure that succeeds. And
yeah.
I think
And
that's
you
too
also have,
bad.
yeah, and you have people dedicated, full-time jobs working for the church, trying to come up with ideas, and um, to, and a lot of it involves money that, the church has money. Um, yeah, it's money can be complicated. We've already talked about money in one way today. Now the other way of how churches use money.
And it can be
Yeah,
used for good things. It's just
it
personally,
can.
a lot of activities, find a way to see if you don't have to use the church's money. A lot of people get skeptical about church because of how it's used. And I think that's such a disservice to how people see the congregation. Because if they just saw the congregation, you took all the activities and stuff out of the way, I think they would be more inclined to join in. There's a lot of happy people at church because they have hope. They have the hope of Jesus. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really cool. That is that is like the hope of the world. We really want to
Hmm.
see, they need to be able to see that dead clear. And it's a real disservice if they're seeing the projects or if they're seeing other stuff in the way. And that's too bad because I've been on both sides of the aisle, man. I've been a non-Christian before that was really skeptical. I've been a Christian that was just, hey, keep your hands to yourself kind of thing. I've been on both sides, and I've also been a regular church attender, which I am again, thank God. Um, People really, there's some real people out there that have some honest criticisms that just don't get addressed. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's anything I hope God does, is that He uses my life to hopefully get get some level of balance back, where maybe the
Hmm.
congregation just does something on their own, and it's not about blowing 5 grand to do some crazy event and feed everybody. Instead, maybe it's just, hey, we're gonna have 10 different events, but then people will come over, and then we'll have something more local. I don't know, something where it's you don't
Yeah,
have to
because
keep
we're not
linking the church to it with their
right. You're
funds.
not advocating that the church completely just stick to the bread and butter of like come to work, on Sunday morning. Uh, Whereas, yeah, I get what you're saying. You're not saying that they should just kind of just do that plain pathway. They still have events, but they need to be mindful of the ambition, they have in their hearts, and they need to be mindful of the people they're requesting, sometimes forcing, it seems like, to be a part of these events, making them possible. Um,
Exactly. That's what I'm
yeah,
getting at. And then people would actually like the events if they're not done so often because it's, oh, wow, something to look forward to that I think most of the church actually wants to do. Yeah, no, that's cool. It's
mm,
it's just definitely having that mindset of it's not always about the events, man. Sometimes some of the best like life events I had were not when I spent a lot of money. It was the people I spent
yes,
it with. So if I have to
Yes.
like take the congregation out for a hike somewhere, but if it's just going to be walking around town, I don't care. I get to be with my believing friends. That's who I wanted.
Right. Yes.
So you win. You
Yeah.
really win in that regard. I think we can really do some other alternatives that just aren't as conventional. But not everyone wants to do it that way. A lot of people are keep it the same.
Yeah.
Don't rock the boat. We like our
Yeah.
events. So that's where it has to be done on a. Well, don't ask permission. Just do it with your friends, because
Yeah. Yeah. Kind
that's an
of.
easier sell.
Yes, you can organize your own activities if you'd like, and then instead of making the church do it for you.
Well, a lot of
Um,
it's called decentralized command. So
mm,
don't have your planning coordinator that's going to be responsible for all the activities. Instead, let the smaller fire teams in the church, and you could even say families, make their own choices, and then you may find that it's more effective. But
mhm.
it's and a lot of this is happening already. It's just we're putting a lot more potato salad on top of the platter, so to speak. It's just a lot more stuff that's being put on, so it's a little harder to see Jesus. Um, but the good news is Jesus is still working even through all of this. Like the Mars Hill thing on Spotify that I was listening to. Exactly. He was working through all kinds of stuff over there. Was there a lot of other
Yes.
crazy stuff going on? 100%. But nonetheless, Jesus working in broken places. That's like the story of the New Testament.
Yes. I'm actually glad you mentioned that. On my way to the wedding of my brother, that we were both in, me and my younger brother, we drove up together to the venue, and we listened to the podcast, "The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill." And I actually wasn't familiar with the Mars Hill and how they rose and how they fell. Um, Mark Driscoll, was the senior pastor of the Mars Hill Church. I was familiar with his name, but I didn't know much about what he did. And so it was actually very, very informative podcast created by Christianity Today. They basically are uh, basically a news outlet for Christianity. And they did a journal piece. I forgot the main guy who did the journal piece, but they did a whole um, dedicated a lot of time to this subject of how Mars Hill rose to power, and then how that all shattered after a few years in a short amount of time. I actually really enjoyed it. So if anyone is interested, that's listening to our podcast, that also wants to learn more about Mars Hill and how a church um, rose to power and fell, highly, highly recommend, especially if you come from a Christian background already. I learned a lot because they not only speak about the Mars Hill and Mark Driscoll, they also speak about churches, um, how mega churches were formed, what was the motivation behind them, uh, other issues. James McDonald is another pastor. It's kind of similar to Mark Driscoll, and there's been a lot of like scandals and things. Mark Driscoll really wasn't a scandal. It was more of like we've got a problem. Like Mark Driscoll's a celebrity pastor basically, and I've listened to him. I'm sure you have too. Don't get me wrong, he's a very good speaker, and a lot of the things he says is actually really good and no one else is saying. And he kind of does it with like a kind of a militaristic, like almost commanding, like this is what you need to do, this is what's wrong. And I actually appreciate that. But on the other hand, um, uh, he, yeah, I don't want to get too far into this, but because I definitely want you to listen to it, the podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. But he, I think he got a little drunk on the power because they were going from, and what I mean by is
Oh, I could
power
say it for you.
can cause. cause problems. Go
Who
ahead and
do
say it.
you think you are?
Oh,
You hear that
yes,
like every
yes.
time in the intro. Yeah, you'll. That's when you'll know, like, oh, this is the video these guys are talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
I think you could find some of that on YouTube actually, which I can post below because
Oh yeah, you can find it on YouTube. I also, if you want to know more, like the podcast does a good job at not only giving you the good, but also the bad and the ugly. But it doesn't just give you the bad and ugly; it gives you the good as well, and it gives you stories of people like actually benefiting from Mark Driscoll. And I actually really appreciate that because it's not just one-sided. It
I can
actually,
think of
I
one
feel like,
story that was really good. Do you remember when the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna get married yet because I'm still need to save up money," and then the guy like buys the ring for him and is like, "You have no excuse now. Get married."
yes, I heard that. Yeah.
And that's only one thing he did. There's other things that were crazy. Like he just
Oh,
had people
there.
living in his house because they didn't have a place to stay, and they got loved and accepted by the pastor himself. He did a lot of cool stuff,
He
and
did.
I would say God worked in him nonetheless as a broken man. But
I yes.
it's that power thing that everyone got worried about. How is this power and celebrity guy? And did it get to his head? I'd say there's enough evidence to say yes, but you should find out for yourself by listening to the
Exactly.
Christianity Today. Get your own ideas because it's
Yes,
definitely a debatable subject.
it is. And I appreciate that. Yeah, the host of the show kind of gets into all of that. He dives in pretty deep, and I really appreciate that. Um, and and I think that the revealing, the insightful part about it is not necessarily Mark Driscoll like personally, but it's and the podcast isn't. It talks a lot about Mark Driscoll just because it's called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, but it's more about how did this happen? How can we avoid this today? Or is this happening right now?
Oh,
Um,
100%. Now, that question's
yeah,
not
it's
debatable. It is still
yeah,
happening, and I would say it's getting more
yes,
problematic because,
yes,
and I think COVID you saw a lot of it. The problems that were hiding underneath the surface, so many problems got unveiled in 2020 with some of the churches that were going on. In fact, your brother, your oldest brother, he he just transferred churches recently.
he did, and he was going there for. Let's see, when did he move to the location he's at right now? Yeah,
He's had
let's
his
see. I
house for at
was
least a couple of years, but the point of the matter is this guy looked
yeah,
at
he's
his
been there for a
church.
while.
Yeah, he looked at his church and he at first was like, I know I wasn't really hearing it, but then almost overnight, just like how the documentary went, oh,
Mhm.
there's some ugly stuff that's being abused in the pulpit right now. Like that's not okay. I didn't grow up to hear this. And he found a
Yeah.
way to be like, I need to like work through this before I decide to quit. And this is a lot. Like your family is probably one of the most textbook Christian families I can think of in my sphere of influence. So when someone
I don't.
like
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
I don't. Yeah,
I'm just saying, like take it for this is my
yeah,
perspective.
yeah. That's fine. That's
Uh,
fine.
if I had to put a family and go like, yeah, this is probably what I'd point to as a good example. That's it. So
Yeah.
when someone in your family says, I need to consider about what my church is teaching, and there's something up, like that says quite a bit. I mean, you're really taking it seriously, and it's shocking when you find out like some dirty secrets that's going on behind the pulpit, which is not
Hmm.
okay. For anyone that's out there that uses the pulpit correctly, thank you because the church needs it. And to those who aren't using it properly and using it for political crap or whatever else, shame
Hmm.
on you and change it right away before it's too late. That's like when Paul was preaching and he gets warned, make sure you preach properly and believe yourself, otherwise you may save others, but you didn't latch on to what Jesus did and you'll be left behind. It's a very important concept. So hopefully
Yes.
people kind of get the message of, oh yeah, we probably should stick to more of what the Bible says and less of what I say, which is another problem that you can find out about with the Mars Hill story. But yeah, we were talking about church burnout at the beginning, and
Yes.
that's something that I take seriously because it's just impacted my family so much. And I remember being a teenager trying to get my folks back into the church, and they go on Christmas or they go every now and again, but they really have a hard time integrating now. They really do. And
Mm.
you got to understand when it's 10 years later, 15 years later, 16 years later, same thing. This happened to so many people. If you want to make sure people don't feel like they've been used and just kind of tossed to the wayside, this is really important. We get church scaled back to where it's healthy for people to go. And hopefully that happens. I'm really rooting for a balance, because people got stuff to do, man. Like you said, full-time jobs, families. There's a
Yes.
lot outside of it that's still
Yeah.
integrated with the church, but it's not necessarily at the center of it's the activities themselves aren't the center of their lives, but God is. If that makes sense. So God's
Yes.
working in all that they do, but it may not be in everything that the church activities will be. And
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
giving them the
I
space.
see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And hopefully that makes sense for everyone else out there, because I just I felt that pressure from people, and
Yes.
I just don't understand. Like you think church is like one of the most freedom things that you can get, and then now that you've been motivated, you go, I can't always give everything, but to the church in terms of time, because God has called me, because God's called people to service in other ways, typically in the form of work and family. But here is something that I can give. Please accept it in terms of a thank you and glory to God. Boom. There we go. A joyful giver, a generous giver, a joyful giver. Mostly the joyful one is the one that we're looking for.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah. I think, especially for people that have never been to the church, or at least have been away from it for a while, when they come back, I know, especially my aunt, she's got such a kind heart, but she attended church with us when we visited her. She hadn't been to the church in a while, and they passed the plate, and she was about ready to like dump her whole wallet in the plate, because you feel that obligation of like, all right, here comes this plate that I've been hearing about, because everybody's heard pass the plate, a lot of people have anyway, and I got to put my money in it, because if I don't, then I'm doing something wrong. um yeah, it's or other things like, oh, if I don't attend this meeting, or I don't attend this event, then I'm not doing what's right. Almost a peer pressure. And that, I
Yes.
think, that needs to be on the minds of the church leadership, so that um, there's a sensitivity to people who are attending church for the first time, who not really know what to expect. I think we as Christians can get kind of take the whole experience for granted, and not consider, like, there's people that have never come to church before, and it can be kind of a scary, unfamiliar uh experience. And yeah, there needs to be a sensitivity to say, we welcome you to our community, and we expect nothing of you. um come as you are. We don't want anything from you. um we want you to grow in Christ, and that fruit that develops from your growth then can go to places when you're willing, when you feel God leading to you to do that, not when the church needs it. I
Yeah,
think
and
that.
you nailed it so much on the peer pressure thing. Peer pressure.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Well,
That's
yeah.
that's like not okay. Matthew 6 is very clear about what Jesus wants with giving. Give in secret. Don't
Hmm.
give when everyone's watching, especially when it's with cash, because people can see the numbers. Where I'm like, if
Yeah.
you're going to do that, at least give people like a, hey man, before you come into the church, make sure you have your giving concealed. You can
Yes,
give in public if you'd like, but no one gets to see what you put in. The church will
exactly.
still see
Yeah,
what you put in, but the congregation shouldn't. And I would say
yeah,
even better, find a way to, in a humble and maybe you can do it ritualistically, but you can do it in a way that's honoring to God. Like the way you give matters just as much as what you gave, in my opinion.
and yes, and why you gave.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why you gave. Those
yeah,
are all in part. That's part of it. So to me, to make to follow what Jesus said, it makes sense to, yeah, you can pass the plate if you really want to, but instead make sure it's concealed. Like before you walk in the church doors, you already have it like in your purse or in your pocket or something. So that way when it gets passed around, if you want to keep that tradition, because I know people like tradition in churches, which is fine, at least the congregation, okay,
yeah.
they gave, but I don't know what they gave.
Hmm.
But if they
Yeah, I actually, yeah, a church I attended growing up in didn't actually pass the plate at all. Nothing is passed. There was just some boxes in the back that people, there's a slot in it. You put whatever you want in inside, and you have no idea what's inside the box. But and you just do it when you walk in or walk out, and it's not nothing. You might as well be voting. I don't know, voting in secret, kind of. You go there, you cast your ballot, similar to that. And the church I'm going to now it has more of a Baptist background. They don't pass the plate; they pass what's called a bag. It's like basically a velvet bag, with the two handles. Yeah. So I do
Yep.
appreciate that, where you don't see like everyone's like tokens of like this is what I'm giving. They also provide that, and I kind of wish they didn't pass that. That it was like I don't think it's necessary. They do provide envelopes where you can put cash into, and then the envelopes can get put into the bag, so you don't see what's in you don't see what they're giving. You just see an envelope. Um, so I do appreciate that, but I see what you're saying. And there's also like now technology has come along. You can now um, give via electronic means. Our church accepts like electronic funds transfer from like a bank, or you can even do a credit card or debit, so that you don't even have to. You can give whenever you want. You can make it automatic. You can do an automatic transfer, which is interesting how technology has developed and how giving has changed. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and along those lines of like peer pressure.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna give the church one good thing though when it comes to giving. I'll tell you one thing. I've given electronically from a ritualistic standpoint and from a spiritual standpoint that feels like okay, it's done. It happens so fast you don't even really think about what happened.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think the contemplation of giving should be part of that process, which is one
I
reason why the
agree.
offer plates are like around because there is this moment where you can think about the giving. I think that part's
Hmm.
correct. I think
Hmm.
that is actively correct that the church is doing it because it makes you think, okay, this is a weighty thing because you're going to sacrifice something to God and to the people of God. So then there should be some level of contemplation, not just this flippant, yeah, I put $100 on my credit card and then it's just subtracted. And so I've done that in my
Right.
20s and
Exactly.
now I'm swinging back to
Yes.
let's keep the
Here's
ritual, but you better hide it. Hide it for everyone else's sake. And then when you pass it, it's not about the I'm expecting you to give. It's just here it is. And it's but that's the other peer pressure part that seems to be difficult to me on the passing of the bag or passing of the plate. So maybe there's another way that we don't do it, but maybe there is a way we can do like so what you were talking about in the back, like casting your ballot. But before you do, let's say like four people were going to go, like they'd have a time, like 2 minutes. So you'd pray before you'd send it, so to speak. So then that way there is that level of contemplation and then submitting. That would be another idea. Same idea of concealment, but still making sure you understood why you gave.
make it maybe more private. I think I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe have a yeah, yeah. Hmm.
So, but the good news is like the envelope thing, that's probably one of the better ways to do it if you still want
Yeah.
to keep the tradition. So, good on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm coming from
This
an
is great.
engineering background, so perhaps there is some level of system management that is in my head that is like trying to link optimization with what Jesus already said. So forgive me if I'm going off a little too much on it, but that's probably why I'm wired to
Yeah,
think about that.
that's good. That's good. We need that. We don't we want the decisions to be made with thought and process in mind, but also not just process and thought alone, but also like uh humans in mind. You know, there's a
It's
human aspect to
Deuteronomy
it.
6,
This
right? Or
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 8. It's Deuteronomy 6. That's the one that says, love God with everything. And that's
Hmm.
the body, soul, mind, strength all put together.
Hmm.
So that's the problem that engineers will think. They'll start being like too mind centered. And then some
Hmm.
people at church that aren't necessarily engineering mindset will be too emotionally centered. So that's where it takes that community you were talking about to kind of balance everybody out. Everyone's kind of got a role to here's the target. How are we going to get there? So that's
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
fellowship comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not supposed to do it by ourselves. And it's not always easy either. People are people are complicated, but I think that's the point is working on, you know, each other, trying to get the iron sharpens iron, you know.
So one man
Um,
sharpens another. Your brother
that's right.
loved and still loves that verse, and so do I. And I remember saying that to him right before he left, onto his honeymoon, and like the guy just lit up like crazy. Um,
Yeah.
he really
I,
just because there was that emotional impact throughout the whole day, and then it just lit him up so much, and that was a really
yeah.
cool day.
Yeah, you can Joel's amazing. You can actually like see his face just yeah, just shine with joy. Yeah. I miss that. Hopefully I get to see that for Thanksgiving. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
hopefully I come join you, and then
Yeah, I'm thinking your parents should come too.
it's good luck. You guys have been trying for a long time, but I'll bring it up. I will bring
At
it
least
up.
Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, I mean, we're not gonna have I know COVID's a thing. I know that's, you know, yes, that's a reason for not wanting to be in a large group. But I think you should at least extend the offer.
I'll extend the
Um,
offer, and I'll for sure see you guys. Um, I couldn't believe it when your own family were like, "Yeah, you're adopted. Come on in." And I was like, "Wow, that's quite a compliment." Yeah, it's been really cool to hang out with you guys, and
yes,
even with this big gap in time, it's like that never changed, which would made it
yes.
all the more valuable.
It was like that. It definitely felt like that. Uh, yeah. I actually really enjoyed seeing you at the wedding. It's been way too long. And it was almost like, yeah, maybe it's been a few years, but nothing, you know, started off we started as if, you we just saw you the other day, which I really yeah, it was great to see you. And I really appreciate about my family that um they're really accepting to others. Like I know a lot of families have a lot of problems, but um and definitely mine does have its own problems, but at least I'm glad they like value other people and bringing other people into our family. It's it's not just about us and our thing. So yeah, we're happy to have you. But
Thank you, Isaac. No, that's cool. I think this is a good place to stop too, because that was that was like, man, we'll use Homer's thing: quit while you're ahead. I definitely feel that way. This is good. I'm gonna split up the podcast from part one and part two, but it'll still be under podcast 45.
sounds good. Podcast 45 part 1 and podcast 45 part 2.
Yeah, Julian will take
Sweet.
care of the thumbnails, and if you want to see them beforehand, I'll make sure you're good to go. So I'm gonna end the recording. Thanks everyone else for watching. Isaac, so glad you came on.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool. At this point, I'm closing the recording right now.